I am a landmine survivor myself, a lucky one. It was in 1994. The tank set off an anti-tank mine. Basically, we had 2 people killed and 7 wounded. The 2 people who got killed, the one who took my place.
This is Silent Killers, a podcast from Face to Face and the international campaign to ban landmines. In 1997, the world said enough and signed the Mine Ban Treaty, but landmines are still claiming lives in many countries around the world. In this series, we meet survivors, frontline workers, and global changemakers, all fighting for a mine-free world. From Cambodia to the Ukraine, the danger is real. The work is urgent, and the path to peace is possible. Step by step and yet still under our feet. This is Silent Killers. Well, welcome back to Silent Killers. We have another very special guest here with us today as we continue to dive deep into this topic, into this issue of landmines and of disarmament, and really just working towards peace around the world. As you know, the episode title here is What the Camera Can't Forget. And I think there's a challenge and an affirmation in that title, it seems to me. And our guest here, we're going to find out a little bit more about what I mean by that. Our guest here, Giovanni Diffidenti, I hope that came out okay. Giovanni is here with us to chat about not only his work as a photographer and as a photojournalist, but the issue of landmines and disarmament themselves. Giovanni, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So I think it'd be great. It would certainly be great for me, somebody who's just really been introduced to your work, and I've spent a little bit of time on your website. By the way, that's giovannidifidenti.com, and at the end of his name is an I, so you can find out more about what he does there. Put a dot in between the name and you'll get to his Instagram handle. So definitely do check that out as well. So Giovanni, if I can go way back, what's the first camera you owned? What's the first picture you took? What was it that drew you into this idea that, taking pictures was an art form or was something that you wanted to do?
Wow. Well, as you know, I'm not a spring chicken, right?
Yeah, I could tell by the hairline. but we share a hairline here, Giovanni.
Yeah. No, basically, when I was 24 years old, I decided to move to England. I was brought up in Italy, in Bergamo, which is the north side of it. And I didn't know a word of English. So my first job was a dishwasher. But that career didn't go very far. At the same time, I was going to an English class for foreigner. So as soon as my English got a little bit better, I decided to leave the job and started to think, okay, what do I want to do with my life? As I was walking around London, that's where I was based at that time, I started to notice things that somehow attracted me, if I can use that word. And it was basically like homeless. I was attracted by people living in difficult conditions. And somehow I thought, I wonder whether this could be a way of contributing to what I see, and maybe I can do something about it. So I bought my first camera, which is an FG Nikon 20 analog camera, of course. And as I was experimenting, taking my very first pictures, I was walking down the Thames and taking still life of things that I found on a riverbed. And all of a sudden, I find a gold ring, a really big one. As a bit superstitious, I didn't keep it. I sold it, and that gave me the opportunity to spend 2 more weeks looking around to see if I could find a job.
So you found a ring. You were able to sell it.
I was able to sell it,
and it extended your trip in London.
And it extended for 2 weeks my staying in London, and it gave me the opportunity to look for what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a photographer.
So it was a pretty quick thing then for you. Something like you say, you saw, I guess you were made aware of other people's stories, and then all of a sudden you said, I want to tell these stories. I want to tell these. What did you say? I want to do something about it.
Exactly. In fact, my very first picture are pictures of homeless. And so
Interesting.
I find this ring, sold the ring, extended my stay for another 2 weeks. And during these 2 weeks, I found a job, or what I thought it was a photography studio. Instead, it was a laboratory where they used to develop E6 film, which was color film. Okay. So during this experience, I was in a condition where I met many different photographers. These photographers were also coming from the USA because the laboratory was so good. And just to mention a few clients that we had in this laboratory was like Mario Testina, who is a famous fashion photographer, Don McCallan, who's a great photojournalist from England. We even had Lord Snowdon, who was the official photographer of the Queen.
So, Giovanni, is it fair to say that you were kind of learning the craft as you went?
As I was,
Yeah.
I spent a whole day looking at images that these people came in from different background. You know, people were doing fashion, they were doing photojournalism, still life photography. But I knew already from the beginning that I wanted to become a photojournalist.
So you knew. That's so interesting to me, and I hope we can learn a little bit more about that motivation of yours for the why. Because I've done this for a long time, and I've interviewed a lot of people who do some pretty incredible work around the world, and I don't always get a good sense for what was it that pushed them into the work in the first place, becoming an activist, becoming a politician, becoming a philosopher or a writer. How do you wind up there? Most of us, I don't think, grow up thinking, oh, I'm going to be a photographer. There's something that clicks along the way, something that happens along the way. Although I have to say, one of my last guests wanted to be a doctor from a very young age. So for some of us, I guess it does start quite young. When did you start? And I know that your work has been published in magazines and newspapers all over the world. You've worked with UN agencies and UNICEF and WHO and ICBL, who's, co-producing this podcast here, Silent Killers, Save the Children. The list goes on. When did you start to get interest in the issue around landmines and disarmament and so on?
I first met my very first landmine survivor in 1989. That was my first international trip. I spent a week inside the community of people with disability, and that's where I first met a landmine survivor. But I was not aware of how widespread the issues was. But it was in 1992 when I decided to move from England after spending 9.5 years. I moved to Cambodia in order to start my career as a photojournalist internationally. That my very first assignment was with an NGO called Cambodia Trust. They did mainly prosthetics. Okay. And it was only then that I could not believe how many people were there receiving a prosthetics. And I realized how serious the issue of landmine in Cambodia was. It was then that I was really shocked. But what really, really motivates me to document landmine all this year, simply because, if I can say that, I am a landmine survivor myself, a lucky one. It was in 1994. I was photographing a group of Cambodian soldiers who were trying to capture the town of Pai Lin in the northwest of Cambodia. One of the last strongholds of the Khmer Rouge, basically. Yeah?
Sure. I know it actually. We share that in common, Giovanni. I've spent many years working in Cambodia. I've made a film about a landmine survivor by the name of Sun Ratana. He fought in the Khmer Rouge, but also with the Cambodian army. It's called Broken Courage. I hope people will see it. But I've been going to that country for many, many years and am very aware of the issues. And so this is fascinating that we both share a similar story in that way. So yeah, please do tell. So you're in Pai Lin, 1994.
Yeah, we were basically trying to reach Pai Lin. I was traveling on top of a tank. And with me, there were other soldiers. There were other two colleagues, one French and one Belgian. And with us, there was a truck following. Okay, it was the raining season. This was a very old truck, and it kept getting stuck on the mud. So every time the truck got stuck on the mud, we were all get off the tank, and the tank will pull out the truck. So there was, I don't know how many times it happened. Anyway, I got late. And by the time I wanted to go back to the tank, the truck was full of soldiers. So I said to the commander, I know, but I've been traveling all the time here in this position, sitting on the truck. And the commander said, no, I'm sorry. Now you go back to the truck. So I went back to the truck. The convoy started it. I don't know, maybe 5 minutes late. The tank set off an anti-tank mine. Basically, we had 2 people killed and 7 wounded. The 2 people who got killed, the one who took my place.
I know that landmines, typically when we think of landmines, I think a lot of people who aren't aware of the weapon, it's an anti-personnel thing. It's for a person, it's a small device, it's a small unit, they're cheap to make, etc. I don't think a lot of us think normally of these larger landmines and I know in Cambodia in particular, things like farmers can be tilling the land with their cows and their plows. They get to a point where economically they can afford a tractor. So they've been managing their farm fields for years with no problem. They bring in a tractor, which of course weighs a lot more, and they end up setting off landmines that are in their fields or around their fields because now they're using larger vehicles. And it takes way more weight to blow up an anti-tank mine. Obviously, they're much bigger as well, Giovanni. And anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there for some of our listeners. But so, wow. So 2 people killed, 7 people injured. And did you avoid getting injured completely, or were you?
Absolutely, because I was sitting on the back of the truck. But the 2 people who got killed, they were the one who took exactly my place.
Took your place. Giovanni, wow. I'm getting goosebumps just listening to your story.
And when they cleared up all the mess that this anti-tank mine made, the commander came up to me and said, you are very lucky. You are very, very lucky. So after risking my life 3 times in Cambodia because I had a story which are not connected to landmines, but they are more connected to the few Khmer Rouge that were left in the country, I decided to move to Mozambique. And I took a break of documenting landmine, but it was only when I moved to Angola that it became my full-time job, basically. So in Cambodia, with the help of different organizations, I work fully for 6 months collecting images of landmines all over the country. And with the result of an exhibition that was made at the Portuguese Cultural Center, but at the same exhibition, because UNICEF was very much interested, he wanted the exhibition to be at Ottawa during the very first conference of the landmine. Anyway, the exhibition went there, and then from there he went to Oslo during the, as you know, the international campaign to ban landmine received the Nobel Peace Prize, and my exhibition was there too.
So this has been a very long journey for you.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, so far I've documented 17 countries.
17 countries. Yeah. So Giovanni, would you say, is it fair to say that first experience, I'm going to use the word serendipity, but that serendipitous experience of you being pushed from the front of the vehicle to the back, your life being saved in this, twinkling of an eye, this moment, would you say that's part of the reason why you still do what you do? Like, is that connected to say, I was so fortunate, I need to tell this story? Like you said earlier, I have to do something about it. Is that part of it?
I think it is. And obviously what kept me going doing this is by meeting these extraordinary people.
Right. The personal stories.
Absolutely. I mean, and I remember meeting this guy who was 14 years old, lost both legs and one arm and one hand. And you should see this guy, how he played football. I mean, this is extraordinary.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. It really is. Well, I think it's very cliche to say the idea that the strength of the human spirit, is there and we rise to the occasion. And I think a lot of us can and a lot of us do. I certainly haven't had to do that, but I would like to think that in that situation, I would. I would learn how to play football. I would do what it takes. But you know what? Until we're in those situations, we can't really know. And I think it's so remarkable that you've dedicated your life to, like you said, doing something about it. And I think that's a remarkable thing.
No, I believe that landmines create victims, but the victims, the one that survives, are stronger than landmines. That for sure. That for sure. I mean, take Tun Channarit. You might have met him. He's a Cambodian mine survivor, Nobel Peace Laureate, a really strong activist for the international campaign, the landmine. This guy has been active since he has lost both legs on a landmine. And he's still going around the world, still talking to politicians, still talk to survivors in order to motivate them. I mean, these are the guys that, whoa, amazing.
Yeah, it is remarkable. Tell me what your thoughts are about, and we don't have to get political if you don't want to, but I am very interested to know how you feel photography, images can help to change the story, can help with respect to advocacy and activism. And I think of some of the images that came out of the Vietnam War, for instance. I think of some of the images that came out of the invasion of Iraq, both times. I think of Kevin Carter's photo of the Sudan and the Vulture and the Bang Bang Club, and some of those things along the way have so shifted our opinion. We're now inundated with images, of course, because of social media and our phones. But can you talk a bit about the narrative, the story, the splash and ripple effect of an image, of the right image?
Funny that you mentioned the Bang Bang, because I've actually worked with Joao Silva, which was one part of the Bang Bang Club. And we met in Angola when I was based there. And as I was a stringer for the AP, the Associated Press, he came to Angola to give me a hand when the Princess Diana came. As you know,
right, of course,
Diana was, he was probably the one who put Angola on the map. Nobody.
Well, and did you, Giovanni, have you seen in the news that Prince Harry was just in Angola just a couple of weeks ago?
Exactly.
And it looks like we've actually put an invite into him to appear on the podcast.
Okay.
But it looks like he is maybe going to continue the work of Princess Diana.
Yeah, I hope so.
I hope so too.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, when I met Joao, an extraordinary guy, and we had to, as part of the job, we had to photograph the Princess Diana, and we saw how much photography and video played a big time in that particular moment. So photography has always played an important role in humanitarian disarmament, even though we are now flooded with images. But we have the obligation to continue to produce new material. We cannot let our guard down. Take what is up in Europe now. Lithuania has withdrawn from the Ottawa Treaty. Ukraine is considering to quit, as well as maybe using landmine as well. So we have to keep doing.
No, things have really shifted. I was in Cambodia and Siem Reap in November, showing my film, working alongside the Canadian Embassy, and I was at the anti-landmine summit there. And it was just days before that the American government had announced that they were going to start transporting landmines to the Ukraine. And of course, the landmine summit was kind of hijacked by this news, and everything sort of changed. But what it did for me, and I think for many, many others, is it just made me realize just how important this issue still really is after all these years. And the thing, again, that we continue to talk about on this podcast is that they really are silent killers. That typically it seems like it's civilians that are the ones who are being killed and being maimed many, many years later. Well, Giovanni, Cambodia, it's 50 years ago that the Khmer Rouge invaded Phnom Penh in 1975. Landmines are still a serious issue in that country, and there is no reason why they shouldn't be gone. And yet here you and I are having this conversation today, 50 years later.
I mean,
it's crazy, right? It's madness.
Absolutely. And what I was amazed is that I was asked by the Ministry of Information from Egypt to document their landmine survivor. And I was amazed to find out that there are still landmines in Egypt, which goes back on the Second World War.
Is that right, eh? Wow.
It was extraordinary. There are parts of desert which nobody could go. And obviously the fact that there has been a serious issue in Libya, that border is still,
So here's a question for you about your images affecting policy change, political change, etc. I was in Cambodia, I'm going to say pre-COVID, about 7 years ago. We were shooting for our film. We were up in En Long Veng, which is also a former sort of Khmer Rouge stronghold. In fact, believe it or not, it still has a hold there politically. And we were out in a remote area. And as we were driving in, rainy season, bumpy roads, etc., I see a truck of women, mostly women, coming out that worked with CMAC, the Cambodian Mine Action Committee.
Oh.
And they're coming out and we're going in to shoot footage. And I think today may be the day that I die. I actually thought that. I actually thought, here we are going into an area that's landmine, presumably. I don't know where they are. No one really knows where they are. And what struck me about that, Giovanni, when I finally got back to the hotel after a 10, 12-hour day, we were back in Siem Reap, I just thought, imagine living with this every single day, being concerned that maybe just today, maybe I'm going to step on a landmine. But I guess you just forget about it. You go on with your life. And yet it has to have an impact, if you know what I mean. Like a much larger sort of impact with respect to, I don't know, things like poverty and infrastructure and farming and all those things. Anyway, I was just so struck by it. I had to put up with that for one day. So many other people have to put up with it their whole lives. And I had to tell that story because it just hit me emotionally as you were chatting. But I guess my question is, have you seen any of your images lead to deeper conversations or changes at a policy-like level? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I mean, like, there are obviously story like the one that you just told that really stay with me, which means that it gives you a total perspective of what it's like living surrounded by landmine. But just to give you an idea, which is quite close to what has happened to you. In the year 2000, I moved to Kosovo.
Okay.
And again, the purpose was to document landmine survivors. And one day I was in Pristina and I managed to get to the hospital, which was, journalists were not particularly welcome at that time. Anyway, I saw this little boy. He must have been about 12 years old, lying on the street. He had a leg missing. And I found out that basically him and his friend were picking fruit just off side of the main road. He stepped on a landmine. He doesn't know how he arrived at the hospital. Anyway, after a while, his father arrived, and he wasn't. Of course, he was concerned about his son, but one of his thought was that his wife didn't know if his son was still alive or not. And this guy came to the hospital from 1.5 hour driving from where he lived. And he didn't have the money to go back and tell his wife what was happening. So I took the initiative. I hired a taxi, and it was evening, it was snowing. Anyway, as we were driving, we were getting close to his house. All of a sudden, the taxi slid down on this country road, muddy road, and he started going sideways. We were going down a hill, and I could see that the lights of the car was lighting sign which says danger, landmine.
Wow.
And as we were lying down, we were getting close to this area. Anyway, eventually nothing did happen. But at that particular moment, you really felt like, whoa, where is this guy living? In the middle of nowhere, surrounded by landmine, and here they are now. A kid, 12 years old, just stepped on a landmine, lost his leg. Anyway, after 22 years, I happened to go back to Kosovo to do a story on women doing demining. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
After 22 years, I met this, what now is a big man, and now his work is helping people like him who step on a mine.
So change does come. It sounds to me, Giovanni, like you, even after all these years, all the photographs you've taken, the countries you've traveled to, the stories you've told, it sounds like you're still, can I say you're still positive about what you do? You still deeply, this is not just a job for you. You really care about the work that you do.
Well, I'm glad you're saying that. I don't want to say that.
Well,
No,
you're still
yes.
smiling. You're still smiling. And Giovanni, I still hear the passion. I think I still hear the passion in your voice.
Yeah, I think now, on the last few years, the biggest challenge is to put you in a condition that you can continue doing this work.
Mm.
It's getting really, really challenging because of lack of funding, because the media are not so interested. Forget about this moment in Europe, which obviously is a particular moment, yeah. But to get media interested on this story is very, very tough. So I will say that most of the work that I did, it was because I took the initiative, and some decided to follow me. And I have to give credit, of course, to the international campaign to ban landmine, because they are always been very supportive about my work. Yeah.
Yeah, Giovanni, I want to ask you a couple more questions if you have a few more minutes. How do you personally react to what's going on in the world today? I mean, here we've got countries that are now talking about making landmines again. We have 5 Baltic countries pulling back from the treaty itself, won the Nobel Prize, signed in the late 90s, and so on. Jody Williams was on the show. We've got Lloyd Axworthy on the show, people that were intimately involved in the Ottawa Treaty. Does that make you crazy? Does that make you does it make you angry, or do you say we have to do the best we can with what we've been given?
Certainly, I am amazed. I mean, this country is not that they don't know the consequences of that landmine. So I always wondered why. Why use it? I have no words for them. Okay, all I have for them is that I hope to still have the energy to continue to go back to these places and continue to collect stories about these extraordinary people who, despite the accident they had with the landmine, they still find a way to survive. And these guys are the real hero. These guys are the real hero. And what drives me to continue is when I meet these people, when I see that they find a way to survive. That's what really inspires me.
Well, tell me a little bit more about that. Where do you think the drive comes from for that? Because I've had a guest or two on the show who have said that, for the longest time I was suicidal. I didn't want to go on. My life was over. I'd lost a limb. I couldn't do the work that I wanted to do. I wasn't going to be able to have a family. But then they tell the story of how something clicks. And you know what it usually comes down to, Giovanni? And maybe this is an encouragement for you. It comes down to somebody else's story.
Yeah.
They become a part of some kind of community, and there's a healing that begins to take place through others, if that makes any sense. So that, and I just, Richard Wagamese is a Canadian Indigenous writer who said that stories are meant to heal. And I don't know. Do you believe that? Do you think there's truth in that? Because it sounds like that's kind of what's happened in your life as well.
Yeah. Let me tell you a very personal story. I got to a point that I was photographing so many landmine survivors that when I used to go to this country affected by landmine, the first thing that I noticed about people were their disabilities.
Mm.
And I thought that was a sign that maybe I could take a break. The other thing is this: when I eventually moved back to Italy, because I lived abroad for the last 20 years, the very few months that I came back in Italy, I was going to the countryside with the same attitude that I had when I was living in Cambodia or Angola or Afghanistan. I was almost afraid to move out of the path because maybe it was mine.
Wow.
I was almost afraid to pick up things that I didn't recognize because I thought maybe they were UX,
Right.
something that would blow
Unexploded
up.
ordnance, of course.
And I thought that was a sign that maybe I could take a break. But having said that, I continued. I continue. I don't have the same issue about going out in the countryside anymore. But on my last trip to Syria, that was December 2024, I saw a destroyed school, and I saw there were maybe about 7, 8 kids playing inside the destroyed school. So I decided to go inside the destroyed school. Obviously, they saw me with a camera and they wanted to be photographed. They were posting, whatever, as you know, most of the kids do, right?
Of course.
As I was moving out, one of the kids stopped me. I was stepping on a new exo. So there I was. Somehow I almost forgot where I was.
Right.
In those kind of places, you cannot forget where you are. You have to keep up the attention all the time. And I couldn't believe that these kids were playing in that school.
We're just playing. Yeah.
We're just playing.
And I think that's actually a great story in a way to reflect on. I think shouldn't kids everywhere be able to just play anytime, any day, any way that they really want to? And yet these kids still were doing that, but surrounded by potentially landmines, unexploded ordnance, etc. We do. Oh man, Giovanni, we live in a crazy but sometimes very beautiful world, and it is really hard to come to terms with that kind of paradox and evil. Really, when you have that sort of that juxtaposition. Can I ask you a really personal question? How do you recharge? What do you do to keep smiling? What do you watch a lot of movies? Do you run marathons? Do you eat a lot of good food?
I did run a marathon, the New York one. That was a great experience. But no, but since I've been here in Italy, I had a contract with a newspaper called Corriere della Sera, and I was the curator of the what is called photo editoriale di Giovanni Diffidenti, and all they were asking me were beautiful photographs, and somehow that became a therapy. So I was asked to go out and photograph landscapes. I was asked to photograph people doing funny things, cultural events, and that became a therapy.
So I find it really interesting that photography, but of something else and something other, became your therapy. I find that really
became a therapy. It became a therapy.
Really fascinating.
And I'm actually planning to make a book about that particular work. And basically, I'm actually saying that to me that was a therapy.
So, Giovanni, do you consider yourself an activist or an advocate, or would you say, no, I'm a photographer, I'm a photojournalist first, and it's up to the activist, it's up to the advocate to take my work and to use it as they see fit? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say I'm a photographer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say I'm a photographer. Just send me anywhere around the world to take photograph for landmine survivors. I let others to deal with politicians. But he said that my photograph, if I can say that, it makes me laugh because when you mention politicians, apparently one of my photographs was presented to Bill Clinton.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was a photograph of Angola, and so that was quite interesting. So somehow we got to Bill Clinton as well.
So basically, you've gotten sort of to the top, but you've worked from the bottom up. And I think, honestly, isn't that what advocacy and journalism and politics and community should be all about? There should be some top-down stuff happening. There should be some bottom-up, and we've got we've got to work. We've got to work together. Hey, tell me about. Maybe this is an unfair question. I love film, and people will say to me, David, what's your favorite movie of all time? Well, I can't really answer that question, Giovanni, but I'm gonna do the same to you. Do you have one or two images that you've seen over the years? Maybe you've taken them, but that have really had a huge impact on you, whether respect to landmines, or maybe it's just landscape, or I'd love to hear what gets you excited.
I do watch a lot of movies, yeah. Uh,
You do watch a lot of movies.
I do watch a lot of movies, yeah. Right now, I can't recall a particular movie, but I do have, if I may have another few minutes, I do have
Yes, of course.
another story which it sounds
Please. Yeah, please go.
it sounds like a movie, but in reality, it wasn't. I spent a year during the revolution in Libya. Basically, I entered June 2011, and I came out in November 2012 after the first democratic election. But during that time, I did a lot of freelance work, and at the same time, I was documenting landmine survivor. But at one point, I heard that there were people demining by hand. So I followed the news and arrived to this place where I saw people. I swear, I saw people in the middle of the landfill digging with their hand on the sand, and they were taking out brown new landmine. And there was one particular guy who will count the pace, and he will go like 1, 2, 3, and he will dig and he will get the mines out. 1, 2, 3, and he will dig the landmine. I thought I was watching a movie. And when I said, look, guys, what are you doing? Are you scared? What do you know? What are you doing? And one of the guys went like this, referring to their God.
Right.
And they had buckets full of fuses and landmine.
Wow. That's remarkable. I've seen images of people in Cambodia demining by hand where they might have a mask on and they're using bayonets and they sort of come in from the side. And I just think, what does it take to do that, to push you to a place? I guess you have no other way. There is no other solution. And I think for me, Giovanni, I'm so glad you told that story, because for me, this means that the work continues. We need to raise awareness. We need to raise funds. We need people like you telling these stories and taking these photos. We need interviews like this that will capture people's hearts and minds to say, this is enough. This is not right. We need to change the way we do things.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. And I'm glad you're doing this too. Thank you for doing this, honestly.
Well, thanks for joining us on this. And I'm so looking forward to getting to meet you. And I hope maybe when we end the series with our panel discussion, our live event, we'll be able to have you back. It's been a pleasure to have you here with us. Giovanni Diffidenti has been with us here. He's a photojournalist. You can find him online.com, how his name is spelled, but if you put a period in there between it, you'll find him on Instagram as well. Giovanni, what a pleasure meeting you today. Thank you so much for joining me here on the show.
Likewise, thank you so much, and keep up with the good work, and let's hope we can meet soon.
Thank you.